Hello, everybody. Tracy, Mrs. JDog Flanagan with you here today. I'm the co-founder and senior vice president at JDog Brands. Welcome back to another exciting episode of Tactical Treasures podcast, sponsored by the JDog Foundation. Our podcast gives the military community a voice in the veteran space to share stories of service, how they continue to make a difference in civilian life, and they share with me a tactical treasure that has shaped their journey in their military career, business, or life. Today, I am honored to speak with Stephen Grayhm and Matt Dallas. Stephen Grayhm is a writer, director, actor, and a graduate of the Royal Academy of Dramatic Art. Stephen is a versatile creator with deep roots in his Canadian and West Carini Algonquin First Nation heritage. He first gained critical acclaim for his performance in the adaptation of The Five People You Meet in Heaven, and has since starred in Netflix Between and Robert Zemeckis' Medal of Honor. On stage, he tackled the title role of Hamlet and performed alongside icons like Al Pacino and Jessica Chastain in The Father. Stephen is the creative force behind the critically acclaimed 2026 veteran-themed feature film Sheepdog. Serving as writer, director, and lead actor, he collaborated with executive producer Joe Newcomb, Dallas Buyers Club, and a powerhouse cast including Virginia Madsen and Bondi Curtis Hall. Since its nationwide release, the film has been hailed by critics as one of the best films of the year. Matt Dallas is an actor and producer best known for his iconic breakout role as the lead in ABC Family's hit series Kyle XY. Matt has spent 2 decades building a versatile career in projects like Eastwick, Baby Daddy, and Shoulder Dance. Today, Matt is expanding his impact behind the scenes as a producer, focusing on stories that demand social conversation. He is a lead actor and producer of the acclaimed film Sheepdog, a raw exploration of the lives of combat veterans battling PTSD and traumatic brain injury. Beyond the screen, Matt is a dedicated advocate for the LGBTQ plus rights and adoption, using his platform to promote inclusivity and mental health awareness. Hello, gentlemen. Stephen, Matt, welcome to Tactical Treasures podcast. I'm excited for our discussion today, and I want to thank you both for your contributions and advocacy in the military community.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, we're happy to be here. Thank you.
Yeah. So both of you have very impressive bios in acting and film, and I feel honored to have you on my little podcast. So thank you for that. But this project was very different. So Stephen, I would like to talk to you first and ask you, what inspired you to write this story?
Sure. So in 2011, I had this chance encounter. I was driving through the night from Vancouver, Canada. So it's like a 24-hour drive, and I was 21 hours into it, almost home in Los Angeles, and my car broke down. And I called AAA, and they sent out the local tow truck driver. And he was just like, "Saddle up, partner. We got a long haul into town. Make yourself comfortable." And it was during that drive into Los Angeles, that 3-hour drive, that he began to open up to me. He was just describing all the different challenges he was facing in his marriage, being the father of 3 children, the financial hardship he was going through. And then he began to open up about all of the medications that he was on that were tethered to his traumatic brain injury and his post-traumatic stress from multiple deployments overseas. And so I really didn't say much during the drive. I just listened, and he just kept saying throughout that drive, "I can't believe I'm telling you these things. I've never told anybody these things. I've never told my wife. I've never told my therapist or a therapist or anybody." And when I got back to LA, I thanked him for getting me home safe. And there was just a look in his eyes that my interpretation was just like this cathartic release of being able to share these things with a stranger, a complete stranger that would listen without prejudice. And that was the seminal moment for me. I was so confused that somebody that could serve their country honorably, be working their butt off to provide shelter and food for their family, and yet he felt so disconnected from his family, from his friends, from his community. And so it was that summer of 2011 that I set out with Matt on a nationwide road trip to try to uncover the truth. You know, it wasn't just a sense of curiosity, it was a sense of responsibility that we wanted to find out, were there more men and women like this tow truck driver that were potentially suffering in silence? And sure enough, from the very first veteran that we met in McAllen, Texas, there indeed were many more, and it became very personal very quickly.
Right. And Matt, so you went out on this road trip together. What did you think when Stephen approached you and said, I just had this incredible experience and I think we need to go on the road?
Yeah, so like I don't come from a huge military family. Like my grandfather served in the Navy, but he never really spoke much about it. And I think what I've came to learn later is just a very common experience is that, so many of our men and women come home and they feel like they don't want to burden their families with sort of whatever their stories or their experiences were. So this was a whole new world for me. And I thought, yeah, that sounds really important and special. And whether this becomes a movie or a documentary or whatever it becomes, it sounded like something that was really meaningful to be a part of. And really exciting, especially at that point in my that point in my career, coming off of a television show and like wanting to be a part of something that felt a bit bigger. So I was excited for it, but yeah, when we set out on the road, we didn't have a ton of people that were like necessarily like pounding like or excited to meet with us because we're just like two guys from Hollywood. We're like, hey, share your stories with us. We walked into it maybe a
Oh,
little bit naive. Um, but it really did. Like we sat down with our first veteran in McAllen, Texas, and it became very personal very quick for us. And there was a moment when we got in the car after that first meeting when he opened up to us and we realized that we had maybe bitten off a bit more than we had realized. And so we said, we can pack up and go back to LA and say, hey, this was, maybe not the gig for us, or we can complete the mission or die trying. And that's what we did. We just started to map out our road on the throughout the country, and we went into every nook and cranny into this country. And that was just actually one of multiple cross country road trips that we had set out on to really, because it was important to us to really uncover the truth and to really to be able to represent or as authentically as possible for us that we could the veteran experience and like what they were going through when they came home and what that transition was like. um, and it became so much more than just a movie for us. It really did become a mission.
wow. And it's true. I mean, I talking to tons of veterans on my show, and that transition piece is a huge struggle. Yeah. So I read on the website that this was like 12 years in the making. Like tons of research went into creating this film. Um, and Stephen, you even interned at a VA in Detroit, correct?
I
I
sure
would
did.
love to hear about all the research that went into creating the film.
Sure. So that first road trip that Matt and I did, we were meeting with veterans in Detroit, and we thought we'd take a shot. We walked into the VA there, the John Dingle VA Medical Center in downtown Detroit, and and you could just imagine the look we got from the receptionist. We first, can we speak to somebody? We are you looking for
Yeah.
entry? Um, no cameras in here, and we were really lucky. There was a lady who was at the time running that location, Lisa only, and she took a chance on us. I think she saw our earnestness, knew like we had been on the road at that point for about a month, so we had heard and seen a lot at that point, and I think she probably saw the look in our eyes of like, okay, they're all in on this.
Hmm.
So she opened up our world to giving us access. So, well, I being the screenwriter, I would travel there for years. I would go and I'd stay sometimes a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, and I would role play with their doctors, with their neurologists, neuropsychologists, their clinicians, their trauma therapists, and so I got paired together with at the time she wasn't a doctor, but her name was Tara Consolino, and she was this 4'11" trauma therapist in training, and sitting in front of like 6'4" corpsmen that had been in serious combat, and Tara's spirit, if you will, her unorthodox approach to mental health care really struck me, and she loosely inspired Virginia Madsen's character in the film. But I got to meet her in that very beginning, where she was in training. She was a single mother. I remember like dropping her off at her apartment, at her 1 bedroom apartment, getting her daughter out of daycare, and just like it rocking my world, just thinking, oh my God, these men and women that are working in mental health are our final protective line for our veterans in our communities, and they're not getting rich doing it, and they're coming to work every day to make a difference. So I got to see it all, like kind of warts and all. You would kind of
Mm-hmm.
become a fly on the wall after years, and
Yeah.
you get to see the things within the system that aren't working, and you get to see the things that are working. And I felt like it was really important to share that in Sheepdog, um, but to also show those unsung heroes that are making a difference. And that corpsman that I reference, I remember standing in the cafeteria at the VA with him. This is probably a year into my research, and he pointed across the room at Tara, and he said, "That lady there, she saved my life." And that became the foundation for Sheepdog. And then over the years, we did, Matt, you can share this, like we did, there was so much research. I mean, I was doing Honor Flight, where you take our Vietnam veterans and
Correct. Mm-hmm.
World War II veterans to the respective memorials in DC.
Mm-hmm.
So all of Von D. Curtis Hall's dialogue came from those experiences, having whiskey late at night at the hotel lobby bar with
Mm-hmm.
Vietnam veterans, and them sharing with you, that speech on the front lawn that Vondi gives on my character's front lawn. That was
Mm-hmm.
all inspired by what was shared. So it was
Right.
very extensive. I mean, Matt, you can, I mean,
Yeah, I would
we were
just
everywhere, every nook and cranny of the country.
Yeah, I would just say to like piggyback on that when we talk about the decade over a decade of research that went into this. One of the really unique things that offered us was that we got, we became so close with so many of the veterans that we had spoken to had become like our brothers and sisters and become a close community. So we got to really, like as Stephen and I aged, the characters would age, and so we got to see sort of the evolution or the growth or the different paths that so many had taken over that 10 years. And our story really is like one of the, or if not the first, to pick up 10 years later, after coming home. So we got to like really immerse like sort of into the community in a way that you just would not otherwise. Many times or most times someone writes a screenplay, they go out, they do, maybe a year or two of research and write a screenplay. But we really
Mm-hmm.
did have that full like decade of immersion and to like really see what the experience was like over that 10 years.
When you're dealing with um, something of this nature, where you're telling the story of veterans and something so personal that they all experience, I really I applaud you for taking that time and doing that research to make it authentic, because there's so many movies in Hollywood that may or may not have been authentic in that veteran space. I'm glad that you guys, really truly put a lot of time and effort and really wanting to make it an authentic story. Um, I
Yeah,
think it's
Tracy,
amazing.
I appreciate you saying that, because we felt like we owed that to the men and women
Mm-hmm.
who had trusted us with their stories. And we felt that so many of the Hollywood films that we saw, um, I mean, we were learning very quickly that they didn't represent what we were seeing.
Yeah.
And because we made Sheepdog entirely outside of the Hollywood system, we weren't forced to by design, do anything that would belie the truth, right? That would
Right.
not
Hmm.
fall in line with what we had seen and experienced. And so we felt that we owed that to the men and women and the families, but also because we made it outside of the Hollywood system, those tropes don't exist in our film. And the response that we've received, Tracy, especially over the last year and a half on the film festival circuit before it came out in theaters,
Hmm.
really let us know what kind of film we had. When you have a Vietnam veteran standing up in front of a full auditorium in tears saying, "You guys freaking nailed it," or a combat veteran and an OIF veteran standing up, you know, at a different screening saying, "I wish I had this film 15 years ago when I got out so I could show my family why I am the way I am, but why
Hmm.
they are the way they are."
Right. Right.
And the Gold Star families that have come out, that have sent us, we get hundreds of messages a day, and it's so humbling the way that the film is connecting and the
Hmm.
message. And that's all we ever wanted to do. We just wanted to get it right for the
Hmm.
folks that have committed their lives to service and sacrifice.
Yeah, I think that's awesome. Um, and I like how you kept it out of the Hollywood circuit because you were then able to control the content. And that is what makes it, I think, so important and makes it obviously the kind of film that it is. And I have to say, I've watched the trailer. I haven't seen the film. I did see that it is streaming, so I'm going to watch it this weekend. I'm very excited. Um, but I have another question, and either one of you can answer this. Sheepdog. Where did that name come from?
Okay, so retired Lieutenant Colonel David Grossman wrote an incredible book called On Combat, which was his follow up to On Killing. And they're mandatory reads or near mandatory reads if you're in the military. And it's basically like my generation's art of war, if you will. And in that, there's a passage where he quotes a Vietnam veteran that provides a metaphor of the sheepdog protecting the flock, being the sheep, and confronting the wolf. And in that passage, it's more of a literal sense of violence,
Mhm.
right? And we felt that I felt that Calvin and Daryl had experienced that in their military service. What we wanted to do with our film was take that metaphor into the civilian experience. Calvin and Daryl now are civilians. So is Whitney, that's played by Vondi Curtis Hall. And the flock that they're protecting is their family, and the wolf is the wolf at the door. And so this was very much, we've said this before, and we really mean this. And once you see it, you'll understand. And those that have seen it agree. This is Sheepdog is not a post traumatic stress movie. It's a post traumatic growth movie, and that's really important because this is Calvin and Daryl, our characters, had that battle, the literal sense of that, and now this is the battle for the soul, and the path to healing and post traumatic growth in their civilian life. And we're just, the message is definitely to inspire and to have folks, whether it's in the military veteran community, um, active duty, first responders, mental health professionals, Gold Star family members, and then, of course, the families that bear also the burden or the ripple effect of this experience,
Mhm.
for them to feel seen and heard. And that metaphor for us really seemed to fit this journey and the journey of so many folks across the country.
Yeah, can I
Yeah,
just add to that really quick as well? Like,
sure.
I
Please
know
do.
maybe not so much on the title, but when we sort of talk about like our film being a post-traumatic growth film, and we talk about the importance of like where we sort of put our focus in this film, and it really was on post-traumatic growth, but it really was about, everybody that is affected by the trauma. So it is
Hmm.
around the whole, ecosystem around the veteran, and that everybody's affected when they come home. It's not just the veteran, it is their families, the spouses, the children's, the mental health professionals, the community. And so,
Correct.
I mean, when you see the film, or your audience sees the film, you'll see too, it was very much also a story about everybody that is touched by the trauma, and everybody that's affected. And it really, like Stephen said, or even military spouses to stand up and say for the first time, like, I feel seen in this, because this is just as much their story. It's just as much as the mental health professional story. It is everybody that has been touched by trauma, and not even just veterans, like anybody that has been touched or affected by trauma in their life.
Right. True. And you know what? I mean, we always say in the veteran community, when the service member serves, the entire family serves.
Thank you.
100%.
The
Yes.
military spouse, the children, the extended family, everybody serves, and it affects them all differently, the service and then the transition as well. So, and it's about healing the entire family, not
Absolutely.
just the veteran. So, love
I
it.
married into a military family, and my one of my brother-in-law, they're both combat vets. His
Mm,
last deployment was, I think, 2016 to Afghanistan. And I'm telling you, you can write about it, but until you've lived it, and for 9 months, it was very stressful for our family.
hmm
And
Sure.
I think of, like, when Matt and I were on the film festival circuit, and certainly doing our press tour for the film, we're gone from our families maybe tops a week, maybe 10 days. I have an 18-month-old son, and it's a lot. It's a lot to be away. So to think of being in harm's way, and it's not 10 days, it's 10 months.
Right.
And it's, it's
Yeah.
we have to be we have to find a way to show our gratitude
Right.
for that
Yeah.
collective sacrifice
Yeah.
by the families.
Yeah. And I think a lot of the civilian world, um, I mean, I love not only your film, it can educate the civilian world. I mean, to really truly understand the sacrifices that our military veterans and families make for our country and our freedom, you know.
That's
Um, so it's important to tell those stories so that they can be educated. We can all learn from each
that,
other.
that is actually one thing, we often ask, like, what do we hope that audience take away from this? And for me, that is something that is very personal, because again, when I walked into this journey in 2011, I was unaware of it, as so many civilians might be. And so, yeah, I hope that at least for the civilian population that maybe is less aware, that they might see this movie, and it might be a sort of a conversation or a discussion starter or an eye opener, so that they might say, yes, like, look, they are making huge sacrifices. And again, not just the veterans, the whole community around them.
Yes, true. Um, so my next question is, Stephen, you have some big names in this film: Bondi Curtis Hall, Virginia Madsen, Lily Cooper, Dominic Fu Musa. Is that how you pronounce his name?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
How did
the
you?
Matt Dallas.
And Matt Dallas, right? But how? So how did you get them on board?
Um, you know, it the truth is, it really came down to the script. I mean, that's what they've told me. I was a relatively untested director, but I know just from my conversations with Virginia when this has come up in Q&As, and Virginia had read the screenplay just under a year from her nephew who served in the military, taking his life, and she's now talked publicly about it. And so it struck a chord that was very deeply personal to her.
Mm,
And I was a huge fan of hers. I mean, I met her on a red carpet 20 years ago when I was doing press for a film I'd done called The Five People You Meet in Heaven. And she was there for Sideways, where she was nominated there as well. And I always wanted to work with her, and we were chatting. This is, 20 years ago. And I thought, my God, just that speech that she delivers in Sideways on the fermentation process of a grape turning to wine. And yeah, the stuff that sticks with you as an artist, you know. And so we had some really heavy conversations of like what this would take and the emotional toll and so on. But she gave her heart and soul on the screen, and we're forever grateful for that. And Vondi Curtis Hall, you know, I was aware of Vondi's work, you know, for years, and when we got talking, you know, he had grown up in the Vietnam era, actually in Detroit. He had had many friends that were drafted, some that didn't come home, some that did come home that had post traumatic stress, some right now that are battling cancer from exposure to Agent Orange when they were in Vietnam.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So he, you know, he knew how high the stakes were, as did Virginia. And you know, I saw a clip of his from Harriet, which was a Netflix period piece, and he hadn't even spoken a word yet in in the clip that I was watching, and I saw it in his eyes, and I turned to my wife, and I'm like, "That's Whitney. There he is. It's right there." He just had this soulfulness and this gravitas that I knew that the character needed. Dominic Famusa, I was aware of his work from Nurse Jackie, uh, but 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 more so 13 Hours, which is the true life story that Michael Bay did on the Benghazi disaster,
Mm-hmm.
the
Yeah.
tragedy. And Dominic just had this rigor and intensity, and honesty. And so from the first time I met with him, I mean, even in our first rehearsals, I really wanted him to be the civilian character that could show my character tough love, and be able to get away with that as a civilian. Um, Lily Cooper, she's a Broadway star, a Tony nominee, and comes from a long lineage of her father's a Tony winner, and and Broadway is tough. It's tough as nails. And it's can often be thankless. And as somebody who was going to play a military spouse, there had to be that grit and that fortitude of the matriarch of the family, and that speech that you'll see that she gives when you watch the film this weekend. I can't give away any spoilers here. One take, and you could hear a pin drop on her set. It's so devastatingly beautiful, and her performance is just breathtaking. So we were very lucky to have her. And then, of course, Matt. So just really quickly, Matt and I met. So about a month after that experience with the tow truck driver in 2011, Matt and I met doing a Western on the Paramount Ranch. Matt was the law, and I was the outlaw. And so, and so
Okay.
a lot of gunslinging and horse riding, and it was just, you know, it was funny. Matt and I always joke about this, but it was a low budget western that they lured us all onto it because they're like, Val Kilmer's in it. Meanwhile, Val's shooting up in San Francisco, not on our side. But the flashback stuff, and we're all like, wait a second, we're making minus $15, which is
Yeah.
what we worked it out to be driving, or you know. But anyway, just like the tow truck driver story, it was just very serendipitous. You can call it God or the universe, but it put both Matt and I on that set for me to share that experience, to trust him, only just meeting him, share that experience that I had with the tow truck driver, and then Matt, during, like, we were on that for about 4 or 5 weeks, and Matt to share his own personal story that he had had in his life, and like the tow truck driver, Matt, in telling me this personal story of his life, had smiled through the pain. So that really I sat with that, and then around the last week of filming, I said, "Look, man, I think I'm going to go out on the road to see if I can find out if there's more men and women like this tow truck driver. I don't know what this is yet. I don't know if it turns into a screenplay or a movie. I'm just journaling right now. But if it does turn into a screenplay, I think you should play my best friend. But the caveat is you have to go out on the road with me and see this for yourself to play the part." And I did not think he was going to say yes, and of course he did, and that forever changed our lives. But I will tell you, Tracy, it also forever changed our performances.
I'm sure it
And
did.
you know, often it's worth sharing that, you know, Matt gained 47 pounds for the role, and the reason he did that, and Matt, you can talk to this how it changed your performance. But from what I saw as his director and his scene partner, the idea was like for my character hiding behind, he's got a long beard, and he's been he's reclusive, and as you see the film, you'll
Mm-hmm.
find out why. And we just wanted to represent authentically so much of the men and women we sat in front of. So these
Right.
weren't decisions that were made for vanity or, oh, wouldn't it be cool to gain weight for a part. Matt was trying to get away from all the roles that he played mostly in his career were defined perhaps by his physicality, athleticism, that sort of thing. And this truly changed for both of us, respectively, how we
Mm-hmm.
looked, how we felt about ourselves, and thus how we delivered the lines that were scripted. Matt, you want to speak to that?
Well, yeah, I
Yeah.
think even more than wanting to get away from, like the roles I played in the past, I think that like you said before, it was important to us that we physically also were represented what we were seeing on the road. And like, I guess when we talk about like Hollywood and Hollywood's versions of these, they're very much shoot the like sort of muscles up veteran, and there are very much those but we had yet to really be seen represented on the screen the men and women that just maybe did eat their feelings or maybe had trouble eating because they were processing either their trauma or maybe a drug addiction or whatever pill or like whatever it was. Like it was important to us to represent those stories and to sort of to represent the sort of untold and unseen stories, and for us to go that step beyond like what the Hollywood movies that we had seen in the past. And it
Yeah.
really did like change. I mean, and like Steven said, it changed everything. You'll see it. Like I put on weight. Steven was, there was he was carrying a lot of stress and a lot of like between. I mean, carrying all these stories with him for so many years, or as we did, or even directing the film and starring. There was just a lot, right? So it changed the way that we felt inside and outside, or the way we carried ourselves. And so it really did, I think, it allowed us to again just like go one step deeper into like that experience.
Hello, viewers and listeners. The JDog Foundation is a 501c3 nonprofit whose mission is to prevent veteran suicide and heal veterans' mental health and PTS. 100% of all proceeds goes directly to the organizations we are partnered with. If you go to jdogfoundation.org, you can learn more about our mission, donate, and if you are in need of help, please dial 988. Our motto, saving lives one veteran at a time. Check us out, jdogfoundation.org. To think the fact that this came from a chance meeting with a tow truck driver who was a
Mhm.
veteran who was struggling and felt comfortable with a complete stranger bearing his soul, that is a God moment. You were meant to tell his story and so many other stories and meant to make this movie. I totally see the roadmap. It's incredible.
Let me
Absolutely
let,
amazing.
let me share the full circle moment with you, Tracy, and thank you for saying that because it was, and I think it took us all these years to look back on that to really sort of be able to reflect on it to understand what that was because life moves at the speed of light,
Mm.
and you're just sort
Yeah.
of going through it and trying to do your best. But when we wrapped on the film, the final scene, you typically shoot a movie completely, it's not chronological, it's completely out of order. So you usually have to remember where you are in the story. But the final scene that we did shoot is the final scene in the movie. And, and that final scene in itself is very metaphorical, and we really hope it does aim to inspire. But Matt and I got in my character's pickup truck, and we drove from that location, which is in a rural location. We had to drive back into town, and we had wrapped on the movie, and we were both in tears. And I turned to him and I said to him, "Never forget that love led us to this place. Love for country, love for your fellow man and woman, your curiosity, your sense of civic duty, like all the things." Because there were so many, and I get kind of shivers talking about this because there was unfortunately so many roadblocks that were put in front of us to make this not happen. If you're a person of faith, you'd go, you know, the devil's tempting me, or why is this so difficult? Why is trying to do something so good that you feel like could help people so challenging and so difficult? And just looking at from 30,000 feet in the air, it's important to share that, because so many people I know are frustrated, and our film certainly does not wag a finger at civilians, but trying to understand, well, what can I do? What do you want me to do? And our feeling is, it's just like, as we did, is like, you don't have to go on a 15-year journey to make a film, and you just certainly don't have to go on multiple nationwide road trips and so on, but just even like getting involved in your community, being of service to others, it's a very gratifying, humbling thing. And I
Mm-hmm.
think that it's also something that brings us together, and that's what we're trying to share in our film, that it does take a community. And if you're suffering
Truly.
in silence, you don't have to do it on your own. It's okay to be not okay. And there are so many resources out there um, to help us. There's currently 5 to 7 million veterans right now that haven't accessed their VA care. Now, it's worth
I know.
acknowledging, yeah,
Yeah.
it's worth acknowledging, not all served overseas or were in conflict areas or zones or in combat. Not all have trauma, but there is access to care that could potentially connect you to a community,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
and you've earned that.
Hmm.
Yeah.
You've earned that.
True.
You know.
True. Thank you for sharing that. That's amazing. We've come to the time in our podcast where I have to ask you a very important question. I would love to know what your tactical treasure is that you would love to share with us today, something that has helped you in your journey in life, in this film, whatever it may be. Matt, I'll start with you.
I think it's what Steven said, is to lead with love. It is always, every step of the way, whenever the road got rocky or hard or felt impossible, is that we always came back to, like, what our guiding light was the men and women that we were trying to represent and trying to support. But it was always, yeah, to lead with love, and I think that's very much something that I've taken as a lesson from this journey, and that I apply into my daily life everywhere I go and every choice that I make.
That's amazing. That's a great tactical treasure. Stephen, what's yours?
I would say for sure, Matt's is one, that leading with love, that I aspire to every day. But I think my tactical treasure would be knowing your why.
Mm.
Mm.
You look at what you're doing, if you can identify what that is. So if it's an endeavor that you're involved in, you know, for our instance, our why was originally trying to complete the mission or die trying, in uncovering the truth of those that have given all to their country, that may feel disconnected and alone in their experience. And why is that, and what can we do to help? That was the genesis of it. And then over the years it expanded into that why being, well, there's a larger community here. Our why is, I want Gold Star parents to feel seen and heard. Why aren't they represented in films or in culture? I mean, the mental health workers, as I've already acknowledged, are unsung heroes, our final protective line. Um, why don't we see more of that? But if you take that just into your own personal life, I think knowing your why of, like, what gets you out of bed in the morning and what inspires you, and what keeps you going, what keeps you motivated. And I think that for me, that's served me, because whenever have found myself, especially as Matt said, like on a 15-year journey, I'd be remiss to not offer that there were many times we wanted to quit, and obviously we never did. But you feel the frustration, you're confused, like, why is this so difficult? Why is this? And you just get back to your why. That could be a phone call that serendipitously you get that day from a veteran. Hey, brother, just checking in. Or a Gold Star mother. Hey, honey, just calling to see how you and the family are doing. And you just hear their voice, and you're like, if they can be that strong, well, I sure as heck can, Matt. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so I think that has served us both. And if I can offer that to anyone watching or listening, is if you can answer that, and in aspects of your life. I feel like it's super helpful.
I love that. Great tactical treasures, guys. Um, yeah, you got to know your why. And, you know, there are a lot of veterans that I've had on my podcast that are in the nonprofit space for the resources to help our military families and veterans. And so many of them say that it starts with that. What is your why? Like
Mm.
what is going to get you out of bed every day? So great advice. Um, so I would have one last question for you guys. And you've talked a lot about it, but maybe if you could wrap it up in maybe one little takeaway. How has having made this film kind of changed your perspective on the struggles of our veterans, active duties, and military families? And Stephen, I'll start with you.
Yeah, that's an interesting question, especially as we kind of, Matt and I, enter this next phase of what this 15-year journey has been, right? The movie's been out in theaters, it's now available at home, and we've done our, crazy, massive press run and all that. And now it's sort of this like, feels like this time of like reflection that maybe we haven't really been afforded or got. And it does feel very humbling and for lack of a better term, has made me feel very at peace because we're
Mm,
seeing what the film is doing. So, what's changed in me, and certainly what's enlightened me, God knows, thank God we fought the fight for 15 years. Thank God that it's resonating and the film is doing what it's supposed to do. I think if I was able to, like, again, reflect on what happened in 2011 in the cab of that tow truck driver, was having empathy to listen to somebody, to share their story. And I think that I'm not oversimplifying this. We're always very quick to judge. And I speak from my own experience. And it's really difficult to walk a mile in somebody else's shoes. We don't want to, it's uncomfortable. Why? I got too much to
sure.
worry about. I got this, I got that, got to pay my bills, And I think that if we're able to take the time to do that, there's something that can connect us to our communities and to those around us in any environment. And I think that my takeaway has been first and foremost to continue to serve as a civilian, to serve this mission and message that's in Sheepdog to a broader sense, to hopefully continue to try to inspire folks, have conversations, open conversations. But I think it's also just to perhaps take this humility and go out into the world with it, understanding um, what we've achieved and how much and how strong the people are and how inspiring the people are around us. And that's a gift, if that makes any sense. I'm still kind of like honestly, you
No, it
caught it at
does.
the same time. If we had done this podcast like 2 months ago, I was wound drum tight. Like I was losing my mind. It was just a lot. And this is just feels like a very sort of, I'm just feel I'm just full to the brim with gratitude. And I think that sitting in that moment is what I need to do right now, just be grateful of what's been achieved and
Yeah,
how it's been received.
right. Yeah. Matt?
Yeah, I would say is the importance of community and connection,
Mhm.
and that it is, even if it's us as civilians going one step beyond, thank you for your service to how are you doing today? How can I be of service? Getting into your communities, being of service to, I mean, to anybody in your community, and just connection and community and how important that all is. And
Great words of wisdom, guys. Thank you so much.
thank you.
Are we going to do a
So,
bonus round?
so I
Bonus round.
the bonus round. The bonus round is tell everybody where. So is it still in theaters, or is it done, or is it at home now?
yeah, we're now at home to rent or own on all the streaming platforms: Amazon Prime, Apple TV, Comcast, Spectrum, YouTube Movies, anywhere
Fandango.
that you can, Fandango, anywhere that you can rent or own a movie, and you can watch it in the privacy and comfort of your home. Just to simplify it for folks, you can go to sheepdogthemovie.com. All the various links to the various streaming platforms are there. You can also pay it forward. Our partnership with VetTix is ongoing. It allows veterans to own Sheepdog as a keepsake. We're, I think, about a week away from launching our national campaign. If you sign up at vettix.org, you can be eligible to own Sheepdog if you're a veteran. It's a wonderful platform. They provide memories that will you can cherish for a lifetime. If you want to go see a music concert, a baseball game or hockey game, and take your family, and they've included Sheepdog in that platform. So that's all there on our website, or you can join us on our social platforms: Sheepdog the Movie on Instagram, Facebook. You can also see Matt's quirky videos.
Oh gosh. All right, all right, all right. We get it.
Okay, I love it. So I also understand real briefly, Stephen, that you actually had not only veterans in the film in front of the camera, but behind the camera. Is this an
Yeah.
initiative that you're starting?
Yeah, so we had 17 military veterans and 5 Gold Star family members throughout the production that we hired and trained on this. And yeah, this is under our production company, Team House Studios. And we would love to be able to expand that initiative on future projects for sure. Listen, it was our honor and privilege. You know, uh, I don't like to paint with a broad brush, but just speaking from experience that we've had, veterans show up early, last to leave, don't
Yep.
complain, have an ingrained work ethic that sets a standard for other folks around them. And then there's this beautiful thing at the end of the day, where you get to unpack your day. And if you're back at, say the Airbnb you're staying at or wherever you're staying, and you get to sit around and some veterans have told us that it's like being back in the barracks, and you get to have chow and shoot the breeze, and that sense of brotherhood and sisterhood has felt really great. And then of course with the Gold Star family members, because of the nature of our film, having them represented, especially on screen, was very important. But also, it also reminded everybody on our set how high the stakes were. Like, these folks are here because their children have given their lives, or their sister or their brother have given their lives for this country.
Mm.
And that can be both very sobering and also very inspiring to know what you have become a part of in telling this, important story of Sheepdog.
I love it,
It's the
guys.
coffee, man.
So I'm excited that it is streaming. Yes, I am going to watch it this weekend. I'm excited to see it, and I hope you guys just rise to the next level with this movie, and people in Hollywood take notice, and it gets the praise that it obviously deserves. So thank you
Tracy,
for
thank you.
Thank you,
thank you
Tracy. Thank
thank
you.
you so much for coming on and sharing.
Thank you.
Appreciate your
And
time.
when you watch it this weekend, hang around for the end credits. Yeah, you'll get to see Matt and I, baby faced, sitting in front of Larry King.
It's
Okay,
true.
Spoiler alert.
that'll be great. I can't
Yeah.
wait. Hello, viewers and listeners. Thank you so much for tuning into this episode of Tactical Treasures Podcast. We've just finished up an amazing conversation with Steve Grayhm, writer, director, and actor, and Matt Dallas, actor and producer, both involved in the project Sheepdog the Movie. 12 years in the making, Sheepdog is groundbreaking cinematic exploration of the physical and psychological toll of war. Written, directed by, and starring Stephen Grayhm, the film moves beyond the typical trauma narrative to focus on post-traumatic growth, a powerful message of recovery, redemption, and healing. With a focus on deep research, Grayhm spent over a decade interviewing veterans, military families, and even interning at the VA hospital in Detroit to ensure every medical and emotional beat was authentic. Through Graham's Team House Studios, the production lived its mission by hiring 17 veterans and 5 Gold Star family members, both in front of and behind the camera. After a sold-out national festival run and a clean sweep of awards, including Best Picture, Director, and Screenplay, Sheepdog hit theaters nationwide in January 2026. The film features an elite and ensemble cast. Virginia Madsen, Academy Award nominee; Vondi Curtis Hall, Emmy nominee; Matt Dallas, Kyle XY; Dominic Fumusa, Nurse Jackie. The mission: if we can save one life with this film, it will be the greatest Hollywood success story. To learn more, see streaming options and their Pay It Forward initiative, go to sheepdogthemovie.com. Again, thank you for tuning in. Don't forget you can find Tactical Treasures podcast on all your favorite podcast streaming platforms, American Grit, on our website, tacticaltreasurespodcast.com, and our dedicated YouTube channel. We are now airing on Reese Across America Radio on Wednesdays at 5 p.m. Eastern and Saturdays at 10 a.m. Eastern for the encore. You can also find Reese Across America Radio on the iHeartRadio app, the Odyssey app, and the TuneIn app. We're also proud to share that our JDog Foundation is a Wreath Across America sponsorship group. For each $17 Veterans Wreath that you sponsor, $5 goes back to the JDog Foundation, whose mission is to prevent veteran suicide and heal veterans' mental health and PTS. You can donate right now at reachacrossamerica.org/JDog. Again, thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you again on another podcast real soon. Bye-bye now.